There are conversations that feel like you're stepping into a minefield. You can start with something neutral, a simple question, a casual remark, and within minutes the air is heavy, the tension crawling up your spine. With certain people, it doesn't matter how carefully you choose your words. Somehow you end up feeling misunderstood, judged, or dragged into a fight you never wanted. It's not just the words they use. It's the way they twist them, the pauses that carry unspoken accusations, the sudden change in tone that makes you feel like you've done something wrong. Your body knows it before your mind does. Your jaw tightens, your chest feels heavy, your thoughts start racing to figure out how to diffuse whatever's about to happen. You tell yourself to stay calm. You breathe deeply, you try to keep your voice even, but inside there's a storm. Frustration at their refusal to meet you halfway, resentment for always having to be the one who keeps things from exploding, and a gnawing helplessness because no matter what you say, the conversation always ends the same way, with you drained and them unfazed. Sometimes it's anger that burns in you, sharp and hot. Other times it's a heavy kind of tired, the kind that makes you want to retreat completely just to protect what's left of your energy. You start avoiding certain topics, then certain moments, until you're avoiding the person altogether. And yet when you do have to speak, all the old patterns snap back into place as if nothing has changed. The worst part is the doubt. You wonder if you're overreacting, if maybe you're too sensitive, if it's your fault for not finding the right way to get through to them. And in that doubt, you start bending yourself to fit the situation again and again until you barely recognize the way you sound when you talk to them. But here's the truth. You're not imagining this. The exhaustion is real. The anger is real. The feeling of being stuck in a loop you didn't choose, that's real too. And you don't have to hide it or apologize for it. You're not broken for struggling with difficult people. You're human. And humans weren't built to live in constant battle. We grow up hearing that you can work things out with anyone if you just try hard enough. That with patience, the right words, and a calm tone, even the most stubborn or hostile person will eventually come around. It's a comforting belief because it gives you a sense of control. If all it takes is the right approach, then you're not powerless. But reality is more complicated. Some people aren't interested in meeting you halfway. Their goal isn't mutual understanding. It's maintaining control, protecting their own ego, or simply unloading their frustration onto someone else. And when you keep trying to find common ground with someone who's not playing by the same rules, you can end up feeling smaller, angrier, and more drained than when you started. Positive thinking has its limits. You can tell yourself to focus on the good or rise above it. But if you're facing someone who thrives on conflict or refuses to acknowledge your point, that optimism becomes another way of blaming yourself. You start thinking, if I just stayed calmer, if I just phrased it differently. Meanwhile, they keep doing exactly what they've always done. Patience, too, can backfire. In healthy situations, patience is a bridge. In toxic ones, it becomes a trap, giving the other person endless room to push your limits while you wait for them to change. And gentleness, which should be a strength, can turn into an invitation for them to keep crossing your boundaries. The hidden mechanism here is that the harder you work to fix the dynamic, the more power you hand over. You train the other person to expect that you'll adapt. You'll smooth things over. You'll make it easy for them to stay exactly as they are. Even your best intentions, the desire for harmony, the willingness to compromise, can feed the very tension you're trying to resolve. And sometimes, no matter how skilled you are with words, no matter how deeply you listen, the situation won't get better. Not because you failed, but because genuine connection requires both sides to take part. If one side refuses, all your effort will only wear you down and leave you wondering why you feel emptier every time you try. The turning point comes when you realize the problem isn't only in the other person, it's also in the way you've been trained to react. We all have patterns that kick in automatically when tension rises. Maybe you over-explain, hoping that if they just understand you better, they'll calm down. Maybe you give in quickly to avoid an argument. Maybe you push harder, trying to win the point so they'll finally respect you. These reactions aren't random. They're habits formed long before this person ever came into your life, and they shape the dynamic just as much as the other person's behavior, which means that changing the conversation starts with changing what you bring into it. Not your values, not your truth, but the way you hold yourself when things get tense. This is where real power begins. When you see that communication isn't just about the right words, but about the energy you carry into the exchange. When you start focusing less on managing them and more on managing yourself. When you notice the hooks they throw out, the guilt, the provocation, the sudden shift in tone, and you choose not to bite. If this is hitting something inside you right now, if you feel that shift in perspective starting to click, then you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe now, because what comes next will take this understanding deeper and give you tools you can use the next time the conversation turns into a battlefield. In depth psychology, every difficult person you meet can act as a mirror, reflecting not just their own traits, but the parts of yourself you've learned to hide. Jung called these hidden aspects the shadow. It's made up of everything you've been told is unacceptable: anger, defiance, self-assertion, even the willingness to walk away. If you grew up in an environment where keeping the peace was the price of love, you probably learned early to push those parts down. You became the one who smoothed things over, who stayed calm, who took responsibility for other people's moods. And because those traits became part of your identity, they now feel like you. The shadow and the parts you didn't allow stayed out of sight. When you face someone aggressive, manipulative, or emotionally closed off, they often carry the qualities you've disowned, but in an extreme, distorted form. Their unapologetic stance, their refusal to bend, their sharp edges. These can feel infuriating, but they also trigger a strange pull. Somewhere inside, your shadow recognizes itself. That recognition can stir up unconscious guilt. Guilt for wanting to be as free as they are, to speak without fear. Guilt for wishing you could say no without apology. And in that guilt, you might shrink, overcompensate, or try to earn their approval, feeding the very dynamic that drains you. Complexes play their part too. An old wound with a critical parent might make you hypersensitive to certain tones of voice. A history of neglect might make you cling to connection, even when it's laced with hostility. These early imprints shape the strategies you choose now: appeasing, avoiding, or pushing back harder than the situation calls for. And here's the most difficult truth. Sometimes we unconsciously keep the conflict alive because it serves a deeper need. A need to prove we can finally win against someone who feels like the figures from our past. A need to get from them the validation we never received before. The conscious mind thinks we're trying to resolve the tension. The unconscious is trying to rewrite old history. When you start seeing this, the difficult person in front of you becomes more than just an obstacle. They become a signal pointing to where your work lies, not in fixing them, but in reclaiming the parts of yourself you've buried, integrating them so they no longer have to appear as an enemy across the table. Only then can you choose your response freely, instead of repeating a script you didn't write. And when that happens, the power they had over your state of mind starts to dissolve. Not because they've changed, but because the place inside you that kept reacting has finally healed. Start with awareness. The next time a conversation turns tense, notice what's happening inside you before you respond. Is your chest tightening? Are your thoughts racing to find the perfect words? That's the moment to pause. Even a few seconds of silence can stop the automatic reaction and give you the choice to answer differently. Name the trigger. If you feel guilt rising after a sharp comment, say to yourself, "This is the guilt hook." If you sense the urge to argue every point, call it out internally. "This is the control trap." By labeling the pattern, you break its hold just enough to see your options more clearly. Practice the short answer technique. Instead of explaining, defending, or over-justifying, give simple, calm responses. I hear you. That's your view. I'm not going to discuss this right now. Short answers signal that you won't be drawn into a spiral while keeping the exchange from escalating. Hold your boundaries in the moment, not just in theory. If the conversation turns aggressive, you can say, I'll continue when we can talk respectfully, and step away if needed. Boundaries are not about changing the other person. They're about protecting your energy and setting the standard for how you'll engage. Keep emotional distance. This doesn't mean coldness. It means staying anchored in your own state instead of riding every wave they create. Visualize a glass wall between you and their words. You can hear them, see them, and still choose not to absorb what they're throwing at you. Shift your goal. Instead of winning the exchange or making them see your point, aim to leave the conversation with your energy intact. Sometimes that means saying less. Sometimes it means ending the discussion entirely. And remember, every small act of holding your ground builds resilience. You won't get it perfect every time, and that's fine. Progress is measured in the moments you notice the old pull, feel it, and still choose differently. Share in the comments what has worked for you in tough conversations. Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. It's not always possible to find true common ground with difficult people. Some will never meet you in the middle, no matter how carefully you speak or how much patience you bring. But you can always stay in contact with yourself, and that changes everything. When you stop letting their reactions dictate your emotional state, a space opens inside you. You no longer measure the success of a conversation by whether they agree or soften. You measure it by whether you stayed grounded, honest, and intact. That's where real freedom lives. In knowing you can be in the same room, even in the same conflict, without losing yourself to it. In feeling the surge of someone else's anger or judgment and realizing it's theirs, not yours. Over time, the heaviness lifts. You don't walk away from every exchange replaying every word. You don't brace yourself before every meeting. You carry your own calm into the room, and you leave with it still in place. This is only the beginning. There will still be people who test your limits. There will still be moments when you feel the pull to over-explain or prove yourself. But now you have another option, to choose yourself first and let the rest be what it is. It's the kind of strength no one can give you, and no one can take away. And from here, every conversation becomes less about surviving them and more about living as you.